Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francescagraham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started. Welcome back, Star Chamber listeners, to another episode of the Star Chamber, a mini episode of the Star Chamber, and I am your host, Francescagraham. Today, the broad topic I'd like to talk about is filing a request for congressional support, or as we hear shorthand, certainly in the military, in my experience, file a congressional. If your chain of command is doing something you don't like, file a congressional. If you don't have enough chairs inside of your tactical operations center, file a congressional. Saw that one happen. And there's 5 things that I want to talk about regarding this broad topic of filing a congressional. First one is, what do most people do when they file a congressional? What's wrong with that approach? What's the normal path of information if you take the normal approach, what most people do? 4 is, why is the normal information flow that I'm going to describe the way that it is? And then what do we recommend instead? We, the Walk the Talk Foundation. So the first thing is, what do most people do when they file the congressional? Most people, they will go onto the website of either their senators or their representative, either in the district in which they are a registered voter or the district in which they are stationed, and will go onto the website, find the tab on the website that says Help with Federal Agency, click on that tab, scroll down until you see something related to military or defense or something along those lines. Click on that, fill out an online form where, you have your character limit, whatever it is, and fill out a Privacy Act waiver request and click submit. And now you have, in your mind, filed a request for congressional help. And when I say in your mind, I am saying in my mind, when I did this in 2023 and filed a congressional, when I filed several congressionals for help, that's exactly what I did. And because that's what I knew to do at the time, prior to working with the foundation and learning a lot more about the right way to do it, or I should say a more effective way to do it. And what I found is that, onto our second topic of what is wrong with that approach, what I found is that really 3 big areas, some psychological ones and some practical ones. First, let's start with the psychological one. First of all, we have in this generation, 2025, your people who are in Congress in their 30s, 40s, age, time frame, 50s, etc., as a way to think about business or a way to think about an organization or organizational leadership. We've really been taught this idea over the last 20 to 30 years about quick wins. And we're told, if you're a leader in an organization, get quick wins because that will establish, your leadership philosophy, all the stuff, right? I'm not going to go into all of that. But quick wins, quick wins, quick wins, and then over time, start to implement those things that seep into and become a new culture or a better culture, whatever it is, right? Well, what I've noticed, and this is especially relevant, I think, for the file a congressional for congressional support, is that your congressional staff and your elected representatives themselves, it seems very much like many of them, not all of them, but many of them have really embraced this idea of quick wins. What does that mean for you? What that means for you is that if you file a request for congressional help for something that is complicated, such as being a whistleblower and being reprised against, it is very difficult for the staff or for the elected representative themselves to conceptualize or want to necessarily invest the time into your issue. What I've noticed is that many times when I've heard people say that they have successfully filed a request for congressional action, or we call it congressional inquiry, congressional action, etc., it's for things that allow for a quick win, such as what I said earlier about there are not enough chairs inside of the operations center for all of the people that are assigned to the operations center. A soldier files a request for congressional support. The local representative gives a phone call to the commanding general and says, this doesn't make sense. Why aren't there enough chairs? And all of a sudden there's enough chairs. And that person who filed that request for congressional action, inquiry action specifically, and all of the people that that soldier tells now has in their head that Congress will take care of me. Congress makes things happen. This is the golden bullet. File a request for a congressional. If you have something more complicated, as I said, you're a whistleblower and you're being reprised against, or perhaps you are facing a court martial and you know that you did not do what you're accused of. And you also know that the criminal investigative services failed in many ways, and that perhaps the staff judge advocate team made some unethical decisions. And throughout, as a result of all of that, you are now facing a court martial. You file a request for congressional action, and that is a really hard sell. There is nothing about that topic that is a quick win. Another thing is that this is less on the philosophical, more on the practical aspect of it, is that when you file that request for a congressional action, help with federal agency on that senator or on that representative's website, what we've noticed is that those requests, essentially your casework request, flows to a local office, whether in the district or in the state. And what we've noticed, right, wrong, or indifferent, this is not a criticism at all of the way that elected representatives manage their teams. What we've noticed is a lot of times the people who are working that case, as it were, are rather young and rather inexperienced, often interns. And most relevant to especially our military population is they really had no experience in or around the military. Maybe they do, but what we've noticed with our work, we've supported over 460 currently serving former service members. We have 51 open cases right now, majority uniformed service members currently serving. What we've noticed is that most of the caseworkers, if the normal route is followed, they have no military experience. They don't understand the acronyms. They do not understand that there's a difference between administrative punishment, non-judicial punishment, and court-martial. They don't understand any of that. So a service member will come to them and say, I will use the court-martial example, criminal investigative services did a bunch of bad things. The staff judge advocate corps did a bunch of bad things. And now I'm here. I need your advocacy to help press for, say, an investigation into the criminal investigative services. Even just something as for military, from our mindset, something as simple as that is completely foreign to that local caseworker who, again, is quite junior, is just starting out, and through no fault of their own, they just have no clue what you're talking about. If they have no clue what you're talking about, it is really hard for them to advocate for you to the Department of War or to the Coast Guard or to any other federal agency. It's impossible for them to advocate for you. And the third thing that I will cover as far as what's wrong with this normal approach, help with federal agency, et cetera, is you're not actually establishing a relationship with someone. Going back to point 2 of your local caseworker just doesn't have a lot of knowledge, most likely has zero knowledge of the military. If you don't establish a relationship with someone over the phone, in person, over Zoom, whatever it is really hard to get past that lack of knowledge or lack of experience with, say, a military matter or even a matter at DHS, who knows, whatever it is. It's very hard to know what they don't know and help explain it to them in a way that they understand so that they can be your advocate. Because them not understanding what your problem is really no fault of their own. They're doing what they know how to do. And it's our job to ensure that they can actually be our best advocate. So those are at least 3 things wrong that I would say with the normal approach: help with federal agency, here's your case number, automated email, etc. The third thing I wanted to talk to is, what is the normal information flow that we have seen of requests for congressional action that go through this normal process or go through help with federal agency, etc. What we normally see is that your local person, your intern, your brand new 20-something-year-old person, brand new, working to get themselves into the political world, they understand their responsibility to take your whatever information you've provided, whether it's 3 pages, whether it's 400 pages, compress that into a memo that they then send from their representative or senator's office, compress that into a memo, send it to the DOD or the Coast Guard or whatever federal agency, Congressional Affairs or Legislative Affairs office, and say, hey, here's a memo, here's a person who says they have an issue. Can you please look into this and then get back with us? So then what happens is the Congressional Office or Legislative Affairs Office will then send that memo or put it in their format, whatever it is, and send it to the service. We'll stick with DOD. Send it to the service, say Army, Legislative Affairs Office, and say, hey, Army, this is an Army, this is a soldier. They say they have an issue. Send this memo to and figure out what's going on with X unit, whatever X unit is. And X unit will, at whatever level, will receive this congressional. Oh, congressional just came in. I mean, we've all seen that if we are in military leadership positions. Oh, congressional came in. We have to answer it within 24 hours. And what we normally see happen is that local unit, who's now been told to tell Congress whether they're doing the right thing or not, by their soldier or by their service member, federal employee, whatever it is, will look at it and say, oh, we'll use the whistleblower who's being reprised against situation. They'll say, oh, well, no, we believe in truth, justice, and the American way, and white picket fences and dogs with big floppy ears. And we're not reprising against anybody. We're great. We love America. But this person you're asking about, look at all of this bad paperwork that's on them. Look at this investigation that was done on them. We even had to remove them from their leadership position after they did all this stuff. And look at all these, unfavorable personnel actions we've had to take because of all of these, how bad they are as a person. And basically, for those of you who don't know, I just listed off some of the elements of reprisal: unfavorable personnel action, retaliatory investigation, withholding of favorable personnel action, etc. And they'll say, okay, so here's our proof of why this person is so bad, which their proof is essentially their reprisal. And they will then gin up their memo. They'll send that up to the service, Army Legislative Affairs Office. Army Legislative Affairs will do whatever stuff they need to do, put a couple commas or more periods in, send it to the DOD Legislative Affairs Office. They'll put a couple more commas, change the font to purple, whatever they need to do. And then that will go back to the elected representative's office. They will look at it and say, okay, well, let's put this into our memo format. They'll put it into their memo format, and they'll say, So we spoke to the DOD, and the DOD said they believe in truth, justice, the American way, white picket fences, and dogs with big floppy ears. And oh, by the way, they told us that you are a bad soldier, a bad service member, and that's why you're getting what you're getting. I hope that this satisfactorily responds to your request. Thank you very much. Have a good day. And don't forget to vote for us in the next election. That's what we see. Not helpful and not very satisfying to that person who finally pulled that trigger that they've heard about of filing a congressional, and they're really scared to do it, but they did it finally, right? Not a great information flow, not a good result for anybody, and really leads to a lot of disillusionment, a feeling of abandonment, loneliness, all of the things that we talk about in other podcasts. So, one of the things that I wanted to cover also is why, aside from the quick wins mentality that I think is present, that I would argue is present, the local caseworker without knowledge and not establishing a relationship, another reason why this is the normal information flow and why you do not see Congress jumping, shall we say, jumping to your aid and telling DOD they better fix their stuff is because they can't. And that's something that we forget in our high school or whenever civics lesson we were taught about this thing called separation of powers. And the Congress, the legislative branch, they cannot turn around to the executive branch, which is where the federal agencies sit, DOD, Coast Guard, etc. They cannot turn around to the to the executive branch and say, you must open an investigation or you must do XYZ, whatever it is. They can't do that because of separation of powers. And that's one of the aspects, things that I did not know when I first started filing my own congressional. I did not remember this separation of powers idea and the impact that it has on all of us when we are hoping for congressional support. They can do a lot of things, but they cannot tell the executive branch exactly what to do. They can hold hearings, they can ask questions for the record, they can file requests for congressional oversight requests. There's certain words for all of these different things. They can withhold a budget, etc. But none of those are fast things. None of those are going to force them to force the DODIG to open an investigation into your matter. They just can't do that. They can ask very nicely and pressure, but they cannot direct. And that's very important for everyone to understand. All right, last thing I wanted to cover. What do we, the Walk the Talk Foundation, what do we recommend instead that you do if you are requesting congressional action? I recommend that you go onto the website, district representatives, senators, whoever, and instead of clicking the button Help with Federal Agency, you instead find wherever it is on their website, which is sometimes a little bit difficult to find, and you instead say Request a meeting or Schedule a meeting. And then in that form, because all online form, of course, you put in there, I am a whistleblower, and this communication, make very clear that you're a whistleblower because you're talking to Congress and you're a federal employee, service member, civilian, whatever. I am a whistleblower because, this communication is a whistleblower because I'm communicating with Congress. I would like to speak with someone about some concerns that I have in my unit, in my whatever it is, right? Keep it very, very brief. Click submit, request for a meeting or schedule a meeting, however they have it set up on the thing. Do not provide to a person, a staffer, whoever reaches out to you, do not start providing your 300 pages of evidence or any of that information until you have the opportunity to actually speak with someone. Speak with a staffer, and if possible, speak with someone who's a little bit more senior. If you're speaking to a local office, like a district office, see if you can speak to whoever is responsible for district case management, not just one of the case workers, as an example. Or if you're speaking to someone in the Washington, D.C. office, see if you can speak with someone who is not the military legislative affairs person who's a DOD or Coast Guard spy, because they're actually in uniform and they're doing year-long tours. They may or may not help you out. And so see if you can speak with someone a little bit more senior. Build prior to actually having that meeting, whether it's in person or it's over the phone or it's in Zoom, whatever it is. Put together, develop a way to actually organize your thoughts, whether that's a 10-page or 10-slide brief that summarizes your issues. Don't give them any of the evidence. Don't worry about it. They're not going to read all of it. I promise you they're not. They just don't have time. It's nothing personal. They just don't have time. They probably have about 40 to 50 of you that they're talking to every single week. And so they just don't have time. So before you have the discussion with them, put together organize your thoughts, 10-page or 10-slide brief, or I would say no more than a 4-page written executive summary of kind of bullet points, what laws, policies, regulations, etc. do you think are being violated? What's a very brief timeline? Were you a great service member beforehand? And then look at what's happening now, etc. When you have your meeting with that person, a little bit before you have the meeting, send them whatever that thing is, the slide brief or the 4-page thing, and then use that as the way to structure your conversation with that congressional staffer. After you get done with that discussion, and as your last, say, slide, if you're doing a PowerPoint brief, or your last page of your executive summary, last several bullets is, ask very, very explicitly what you were hoping to get from this conversation. I am hoping to get you to send a memo from your congressman to the, I don't know, DHSIG and say, hey, DHSIG, why haven't you started an investigation into these matters? This service member made this complaint. It seems like it should be investigated. Why haven't you started investigation? As an example, they can't tell them to start investigation. They can say, why haven't you? Right? Because that puts pressure on them to say, oh, well, we're reprising against this person. That's why we haven't started investigation on their stuff. Too busy investigating them to reprise against them. Anyways, so last thing, have as last portion of brief, very explicitly what you're asking, hoping to accomplish, and then ask them, can you help me? Most times you'll get no more than 30 minutes for a brief, for a discussion. So you want to keep, if possible, your talking points to no more than about 10 to 15 minutes. That leaves about 15 to 20 minutes for a conversation, because again, you're trying to build a relationship or establish some sort of relationship with that congressional staffer to humanize you and to humanize your situation. And then at the end of that meeting, if they express any sort of interest in helping you, which hopefully they do, then you say to them, well, I already have prepped a full packet with my request for congressional action up to and including my evidence. Would you like me to send that to you? Hopefully they say yes, and then you send that to them. We have found that while not perfect, and also while still acknowledging that thing called the separation of powers, we have found that that path is a lot more successful to our people that we help, our 51 open cases, our clients. We have found that that path is a lot more conducive, I should say, to a real level of engagement from a congressional staff, a congressional member, on behalf of the service member, the federal employee, whatever it is. And it also helps with the service member, federal, civilian, etc. It helps them to understand Congress a little bit better so that they can better frame their arguments and have better discussions in the future. In our next episode on this specific topic, I'll talk a little bit about the Game of Thrones that I've discovered in Congress. It's really kind of fascinating. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was helpful. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next episode.